Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, Redeemed Carnivore. Today I am too excited to be talking with Lone Star Keto girl, Amber Wentworth. Amber, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
I am doing a little poll here, I guess you want to call it, with people that I interview because I'd like to get everybody's different perspective on the term addiction slash eating disorder. And I'll tell you a little bit about my therapist said something about eating disorder. And I'm like, what? No, I have addiction. I don't have eating disorder. And then I went to, came back home and I asked my husband and he's like, well, why can't it be both? And I was like, wait, what? So I wanted to get everybody's kind of perspective and their story, and I know that you work with clients as well about what it means to you, addiction, eating disorder.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, yes, you can have both. They are different because an addiction is an addiction, whether it's alcohol or food or some other a drug. It's just what substance it is. So I mean, by saying this is an addiction versus, but this isn't. It's an addiction. I mean,
Right.
if you can't go without thinking about this substance, regardless of what it is, if it consumes your life, if you go to bed thinking about it, you wake up thinking about it, you literally cannot live without it. And also, if you have a withdrawal from it when you do quit, for instance, sugar, carbs, once you quit eating that, you do have carb withdrawal. You
Yes.
just do. So there is a withdrawal. So there is a physiological addiction as well as, kind of an emotional, psychological type of addiction as well. So addiction is very real. And I don't think it necessarily has to be one or the other. Now, an eating disorder, which I've suffered from multiple ones. Bulimia, anorexic were my two big ones, but I also suffered from anorexia athletica, which is a over exercising kind of thing where you
Yeah.
like exercise all day long kind of thing. And I did that horribly for about a good year. And those are disorders. Now, an addiction is a disorder too, but to me, they're not really the same,
Yeah.
but they kind of go together in a way, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Right.
So yeah, my opinion is kind of like you can definitely have both. I mean, yeah, I don't think, saying an anorexic is addicted to food. That's not what that is about,
Yeah.
and neither is bulimia. So that's different to me.
Well, uh, what I have discovered with my own self is I had an addiction to alcohol, which turned into sugar addiction because alcohol and sugar are, closely related. So I just replaced one with the other.
Mhm.
But looking back on my years, I found out that I had an eating disorder because I could see how it just kind of morphed as the years went on. But I didn't recognize it. I was never told this is what you have. Growing up in the South and you being in Texas as well, you know, we eat. That's just one of the things we eat.
Yeah, we do.
So, you grow up eating a certain way and, all through childhood and me being the age I am, which is 49, I don't mind saying it, but I grew up in the 80s, 70s and 80s. Well, we didn't talk about, okay, addictions. We didn't talk about, well, that one's got a problem, unless it was like a real big problem. And, then as I got older, it just, childhood trauma, and that sort of thing, it just kind of morphed. And, I realize the older I get, And I look back and I'm like, oh, wow, I've had this my whole life. I've just learned to deal with it, not deal with it that well, because it's gotten out of hand. But, and you were talking about that the eating disorder and the addiction, they're kind of the same, but they're really not. And I think that it can turn from one to the other. Would that be kind of what you have experienced or what you see with your clients?
Well, okay, here's the problem. You those in themselves is not what the issue is. That is just a symptom from something else that has happened, like you kind of mentioned, underlying trauma. If you there's a reason why you turn to certain things, why you need that. Like, with eating disorders, a lot of times it's control.
Yes.
And it's about having something you can control. So why do you have that need? There is needs that are not being met. There is a trauma that has not been addressed. And it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's, binging or, alcohol or drugs. Yes, you have the physiological addiction, yes, but there is a reason why you're substituting that drug of choice, if you will, for something that is unresolved,
Right.
some need that's not being met, or, whether it's just dealing with that trauma or whatever it is. And it
Right.
could be something so minor, but it's manifested and been in your, subconscious mind for so long that you don't even recognize it anymore. And to somebody else, they may think, oh, that's no big deal, get over it. Well, yeah, you don't work that way. That's not how it works.
Right.
And if that is not addressed, you're going to turn from one addiction to the next, to the next, to the next, or
Right.
whatever. It's
Absolutely.
going to be replaced. Cigarette smoking, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, because there's something not right. Now,
Right.
again, there's always the physiological addiction, like sugar. I don't care what anybody says, it is addicting. And
Yes, it
our
is.
food is designed to addict. And there are
Yes.
drugs that are addicting.
Yes.
So yes, there is that part, absolutely. But, still, if you don't go back and you deal with the reason why you even wanted to start that or couldn't let it go, it's still going to be there, even if you're able to kick the particular addiction, like be able to break the addiction of alcohol, for say.
Right.
You can move on to smoking cigarettes or binge eating,
Right.
because you still haven't dealt with that issue.
Right. Right.
So
Absolutely. Do you feel, and I'll for this in my own life, the trauma and the childhood trauma and all like that, that is something that I'm still working towards. But, you know, as carnivores, we can cut out the sugar and the carbs and just focus on the absolute meat, and it is healing. It healing in your physical body. But do you find that with yourself and with clients as well, the mental part is, that is where the big, I guess you'd call it the big struggle or the big work is?
oh, absolutely, absolutely. Because when you are brain fogged and your hormones are not balanced because you're not eating the proper nutrient dense diet, you're not getting the nutrients you need. Or like in the case of just eating too many carbs, and I'm talking processed, I'm not talking vegetables or whatever. I'm talking the
Right.
processed carbs, sugar. It really messes with your hormone balance. And
Yes.
when that is out of whack, it whacks out your whole body. So you can't
Right.
have clear thoughts. For instance, today on my Instagram, I made a post about real eggs versus the fake, liquid eggs. And oh
Yes,
my goodness, I don't know if you saw that one,
I
but I
did.
got hammered. Okay. And that was ridiculous. But I can't help but think that that person has some serious deficiencies as far as nutrients go, because they can't think straight. They can't critically think. They're too emotional. They're, the hormones aren't balanced, so you can't function. I remember when I used to get PMS something, oh,
Yes.
PMS, big deal. But you know what? I lost my ever loving mind.
Yes.
I
Yes.
screamed at my kids and I didn't even know why. And I would go, what am I doing?
Right.
Why did I do that? I can't control myself. It's
Right.
because my hormones were out of whack. I was PMSing and plus I was eating crap. And
Right.
so, yes, absolutely. Without a clear mind, it makes it very difficult to focus on the part that really needs to be focused on. So, yes, if your question is, does diet play a part in that? Absolutely. Now, does it cure the addiction? No, 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 no. It can help break, like sugar addiction or something. Yeah, sure. But it's not going to all of a sudden cure you, but it makes it where you can focus on the real issue.
Right. Right. You talking about PMS and everything. When I was 32 years old, I started having fibroids and cysts on both ovaries, and I was in extreme pain to the point of to where I had to have a hysterectomy
Mhm.
at age 39. Well, then here comes all of the, night sweats, hot flashes, and weight gain on top of me having the addiction slash eating disorder. That just threw me for a whole loop. And I wish that I had had somebody when I was 32 years old to look at me and go, why don't you try changing how you're eating? That's
Me
the
too.
simplest thing to do. To whereas, and I'm like you, I remember screaming at my child because of the hormones and everything. And it was just like, who are you? Who is this person?
Exactly.
Why are you doing this? Because as you're screaming, you're sitting here in your brain going, stop, what are you doing? You know, so yes, it absolutely can damage you for years with all of the processed foods and the hormones and the brain fog, and you can even, my mother had diabetes. Well, I wish that her doctor would have been smart enough to tell her years ago, and she also had high blood pressure. Hey, why don't you try changing the way you're eating? What they did was, is here's a medicine,
Yep. Yep.
and basically, I was on the Jimmy Moore program, and he talked about my childhood, and he said, your mother just basically committed suicide. It was a slow suicide because she had eating disorders and she had issues with food that she didn't resolve. So it basically killed her.
Yeah.
And I sat here dumbfounded when he said that, going, you are absolutely right.
Yeah. But she didn't know.
Right,
That's
right. She
not what
did.
she was told,
No,
so
no.
that's the tragedy of it all. And especially even right now, we're we live in a sick care system, not a healthcare system. And
Right,
so they only deal with the symptoms. Very few
right,
actually try to find the root cause of anything. And
right,
so, yet, like your mom, she was thrown pills. And if type 2 diabetes can almost always be reversed, there are always exceptions. But for the most part, change your diet and lifestyle, boom. But you're told, oh, you're always going to be on insulin or whatever, metformin or whatever
right,
it is. And
right.
that's horrifying to me, absolutely horrifying, because I deal with people every single day who have reversed it. And that's a bunch of bonk. And I have a cousin who, he's in such bad shape, but he followed the ADA guidelines to a T, he claims, and I believe him. But he did what he was supposed to do. He has lost half of a foot, toes on another foot. He's on dialysis. He had a triple bypass. He is not doing good. And
Wow.
I remember having a conversation with him about, I don't know, 3.5, 4 years ago, talking to him. And he was like, oh, I follow the ADA guidelines. I'm allowed to have blah, 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 blah. So I can have, like a little piece of the pie. It was at Thanksgiving. And I was like, oh my gosh. And at that time I was keto. And so I had brought my own keto dessert, my own
Right,
keto food, and I was letting people try it because I brought enough, for other people to
right.
try it, and yummy stuff.
Yeah,
And he tried it and he goes, wow, that's really good. And I'm like, well, that would be a really good thing. You could really be able to control your diabetes,
right.
and he was like, well, I'm allowed to have, and he talked about, what he can have for his meals and then plus the snacks in between. He's supposed to
Yeah,
eat all day long. It's horrifying, absolutely
right.
horrifying.
And even my dad, he's had a heart attack. He's on medications for cholesterol because his
Oh God.
cholesterol is elevated, and I'm just like, and now, his memory is going,
Mm,
well, you've been on cholesterol medication. That's one of the side effects. The doctors about 3 or 4 months ago looked at me and said, well, your cholesterol is high and your numbers are high. And that's when I was clean for a year, but then I went back because mom's been dead 3 years and it's just threw me for a loop. And, so I went back to eating crap.
right.
And so the numbers showed it. Well, I had been for about, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I had been on strict carnivore because I knew that worked for me. So I went back to that. But then, my numbers were showing, hey, you've been eating crap. And don't let viewers out there, your numbers will show. Just heads up, especially that A1C. And so it said that my cholesterol was high and whatever. And of course, your doctors are going to say, oh, well, you need to be on statins and whatever. And I looked at her and said, no. She was mortified that I said no. She kept
Yeah.
calling me, Amber. She kept calling me and harassing me, saying,
Oh
you need to
my
be on statins, you need to
gosh.
be on statins. She says, come back, because my numbers were so elevated. She says, come back and do a fasted blood test, like the next day or so. And I'm like, okay, you know. And she's like, oh my gosh, they're even higher. And, you know, I know even 2 weeks later, she was calling me to get back on statins. I dropped her as a doctor. Just for the record, I dropped her as a doctor because I thought, you
Mm,
have no clue.
yeah. Yeah.
And
I think that's so sad. I mean, I'm not going to say there's not any reason, ever to be on a statin, but there are a few exceptions
right,
out there, of
right,
course. There's
yeah,
always exceptions.
yeah,
But for the most part, oh my God, there's other ways of dealing with it. Eat real foods, get a little exercise, get out in the sun, get quality sleep. All of that helps to bring everything back in balance.
right,
Drugs are not the answer. They're not the answer. I'm not saying that a drug is never needed. No,
right,
you know,
right,
medical advancement is a wonderful thing. Yes.
right, absolutely,
But when you're not even bothering to treat the underlying issue first,
right,
oh,
right.
yeah.
And in my life, stress plays a big part of it.
Oh, yeah.
Because I am taking care of dad. I did just lose mom. You know, uh, I was working. I was a caregiver plus taking care of my dad, and all this other kind of stuff. So yes, that plays a part of it too. I was not walking like I was supposed to be. I was not exercise. I was not lifting heavy stuff. Um, that we're told to do. Wasn't out getting outside, and even my dad, they put him on vitamin D. And I'm like, Dad, go outside.
Yeah. Get some sun.
Go outside. You know, he sits inside and he's able to get outside. I'm like, go outside and sit in the sun for 30 minutes, a day. It's like there's simple things that we can do. Now, yes, dealing with childhood trauma, dealing with, going to talk to a therapist. I'm the first one to admit I have been to therapists for years. Um, I will say, however, I think that the therapy industry is not very advanced on eating disorders and,
Agree.
addiction. Because I myself was told when I went into a program, oh, well, we don't deal with people that just want to eat chocolate cake. And I explained to them, because I said, I have a sugar addiction. I named the addiction to them. I said, y'all, I have a sugar addiction. And they're like, we only treat drug addicts. And I'm just like, y'all, this is a drug. And they talked to me a little bit further and they realized, oh, wow, this is real. This is just like she is a heroin addict. And I'm like, well, yeah, it lights up the same part of your brain as heroin.
Yeah.
You know, and it's readily available, go to any
And
southern.
encouraged. That's the only addiction you cannot avoid. That's the problem.
Right.
And how many people do you say, for an alcoholic, for instance, oh, just have one glass of wine, it's not going to hurt you. You don't hear people saying that unless they're sick, right?
Right.
But how many times do you hear people, oh, just have one piece, it's not going to hurt you.
Right.
Oh, you're just on a diet, just get over it, just have a piece. No, you would not do that to any other addiction. You're a gambler. Oh, let's go to Las Vegas and go to a casino. No,
Right.
you would not do that, right? But why do we think it's okay? And I've done it too. So I'm guilty too. I've said these things, but why do we do that? And not to mention TV programs and the news and, commercials, radio. It's our comfort. It's our whole life revolves around food. So you can't escape it. So I have talked to addicts who have been they've gone from one to the other, who have been, alcoholics, who have been drug addicts, and also food addicts. And they said, hands down, breaking the food addiction was way harder than the other two, hands down. And I've heard this more than once.
Yes. So. I can leave the alcohol alone. I can leave the cigarettes alone, no problem. Every once in a while, I'll think, oh, well, I'd love to have a glass of wine. And I think, yeah, and that sugar and carbs in that would just start it all over again. So no, but absolutely. Did you see that there's even in the infant formula, they're doing chocolate flavored now?
That's terrible. That's absolutely terrible. When my granddaughter was about to be born, I was going to keep her after my daughter had to go back to work. Yeah. And I wanted to be sure that in case we ran out of breast milk, that I had something on hand. So I did a search. Oh my gosh. Yeah. There was nothing good, nothing good. And I finally found one out of Germany that was better. Wasn't good, but it was better. But seriously, we are addicting our kids from birth.
Right.
It is just awful. I mean, and chocolate, really?
Yeah. Well, and now for the ones that can't breastfeed, absolutely.
Sure. You don't have a choice.
Exceptions to that, because I saw somebody who said, I am unable to breastfeed. Either they had adopted or there was a circumstance that went on, and they were diligently trying to search for an infant formula that was halfway decent. And like you, they
doesn't
were like,
exist.
We found one, but
it's still not good. Yeah. They have seed oils in them, heavy corn syrup. I mean, awful, just awful. Right. And yes, there are people who cannot breastfeed. They're absolutely, and it's not their fault. Right. The good formula doesn't exist. It just doesn't.
No, it does not. It absolutely does not. And it starts out young, and this is why that I'm partly the reason why I'm doing this channel and why I'm trying to get out there and trying to talk to people is because I have 3 granddaughters and they're young, and I want them to be able to go in life without being like me and having the addiction and having the issue with food. And, I did the binging. I never did the purging, but I would also restrict myself. It was a type of anorexia because I would fast. Like, we're talking extended fast. That's what I called it, was fasting. Me and a friend of mine, that's what, we did. Well, I now cannot fast because it just triggers that old mentality.
Mm-hmm.
I have stomach issues because, of the way I would eat. I don't want that for my grandkids. I
Yeah.
want them to have a healthy relationship with food, to see
Mm-hmm.
it as, it is fuel. Number one, it is to fuel
Nourishment.
life. Now, yes, we are to enjoy our food. Absolutely. But when it comes to the point to where, like you were saying, when you go to bed thinking about it, when you wake up in the morning thinking about it, or when you're obsessed with gaining 2 pounds, I've
Yep.
had to take the scale away because I was
Me
weighing
too.
every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I was walking excessively, like, I got to get them 10,000 steps in. I got to, and I know that because you were just saying that you had that issue as well. So, you can relate, but
Oh yeah.
I don't want them to have that, so that's why I'm starting now with them, going, hey, I don't tell them exactly what, happened with me, but I say, hey, let's make better choices. Let's choose something better. I try not to say, oh, well, that's crap. Now, sometimes it does come out because processed food is crap. I'm sorry.
It is crap. I'm sorry. It is.
And what mom and dad feed them,
Yeah.
that's on them. But I try real hard when I'm around saying, hey, here's this keto stuff, which some keto stuff you got to be careful too. But I try to say, hey, this is a little bit better. Let's have this, and
I know.
you can only do so much, just
Yeah.
like with my mom. Towards the end there, I really tried to get her low carb, and I tried to get her, I would cook for her so she wouldn't have to, and say, hey, here, mom, me and you can eat this and we'll feed them, because they chose not to. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. And she did, but yet she'd go around behind me and sneak and get the stuff that she wasn't supposed to eat. And that was sad to me because she was mad at me because I was, you know, I guess she thought I was, didn't care about her. I'm like, Mom, this is how I'm trying to help you. But she didn't, I think she was so far into the addiction, she didn't want help.
Yeah. Yeah. And you see that a lot. People will make up excuses for anything. And this is one thing that always kills me when people say things like, oh, I can't live without blank, insert your, processed crap food. And if that's the case, and you get defensive if somebody says something like, well, that may cause you issues or whatever, they get defensive. You better ask yourself why. Because I think you probably deep down know it. You don't want to admit it. You don't want to face it. And also, when somebody gets extremely triggered over you making better decisions in your life as far as diet goes, especially if you go to extremes, like saying you only eat meat or whatever, oh my gosh, all of a sudden you're this crazy psycho person who doesn't know what they're doing. They're going to die of a heart attack, blah, blah, blah. But they didn't say jack crap when you were eating Twinkies and guzzling Coke. Okay.
Right.
And
right.
then, they have the nerve to say, oh, I could never give up bread, if you will.
Right.
Yeah, if you say that, you probably have an issue. And
Right.
yeah,
I had
you better
somebody
examine that.
right. I had somebody just tell me, because I said, well, I eat carnivore, I eat meat and eggs. And they looked at me and said, that sounds boring.
Oh yeah, I hear that all the time. Mhm.
Or, and I'm like you, I used to take to all my family functions, and they've gotten to where they know this by now. I've done it for so long, that I bring my own food.
Mhm.
And they're like, okay, well, we're having a family function and we're having this, this, and this. And I said, well, I'm not gonna. And they said, yeah, we know, you bring your own food. But they treat me like I've got two heads when I say I'm
Right.
carnivore.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yet when I was at my highest weight, I was 262 pounds. So when I was 262 and couldn't hardly get around, and couldn't chase my daughter, and play with her, but yet I was eating cake and shoveling everything in my mouth, you never said one word to me. In fact, you
Nope.
encouraged me, oh, have another piece.
Yep. That's exactly right. And that is what is so frustrating. But you know what? We all do it. We have all done that kind of thing. And that just goes to show how ingrained that is in our
Right,
society.
right.
It's, we use food as comfort, we use it for everything, but food is not entertainment. Food is
No,
not comfort. It doesn't mean you can't enjoy your food. It doesn't mean that you can't have celebrations that include food.
right.
No, it's just we make it the center of the attention.
Yes,
Instead of the get together being about family and gatherings, it's about the
right,
food.
right,
That's kind of pitiful. I mean, not
right.
that it can't be a part of it, not that it can't be good. And not everybody has to do the same thing you do. That's okay too. But the fact that we put so much importance on it being this, it is an integral part of our life. Yes, because we need it to live. But, when you make it into this bigger than life thing, of course you're going to have a weird relationship with it,
Right, right.
you know?
And here, since we've had some issues with health and that sort of thing go on last year and year before, you know, I wonder, do you still see a lot of people that still are entrenched with the addiction of food because we couldn't have the get-togethers, we couldn't, so we had to do online and that sort of thing. Have you seen an increase or a decrease with your clients with that?
A big increase, because guess what? When you're in this situation, you are removed from the people you love. When we were more of in the, isolation, whatever weirdness it was, and you turn to it for comfort. Alcohol use increased, junk food consumption increased.
Right.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, it only makes sense when you force something on people and you scare them half to death. And what are you going to do? I'll admit it. My drinking increased. I'm not saying it was like out of hand, but compared, I was like, oh, good gosh, I need something. I did it. I did it. So
Right.
yes, absolutely. I didn't turn to food or anything, but yeah, I mean, I definitely had those thoughts, and yeah, because you want that comfort, and it's such a crazy time. But nobody, except for our community, is talking about the root cause.
Right.
It's really not about what they said, because what's out there. I'm not saying it wouldn't affect people. I'm not saying that, but it wouldn't be the issue it is if 88% of us weren't metabolically messed up.
Right. Right.
That's the fact. Fact.
Right.
We've had over a year and a half to have this conversation and make changes. What a
Right.
better time than when you're stuck not being able to do anything.
Right. You
But
know,
did we do that? No.
yeah,
Some people in our community did, but for the majority, no. They ate more ice cream, they drank more, they were pity party kind of thing, right?
right.
And so their health is worse. Plus, they were isolated and they weren't getting out, they weren't getting the vitamin D, they weren't
Right.
covering up their faces and the germs up in the blood, and not being able to
Right.
breathe adequately. That made everything worse,
Right.
made you more
Right.
susceptible. You're less healthy now, except for there are some that actually did step it up and actually use the situation to better themselves.
Right.
I
Right.
know people who did this, but as a whole, that's not what I've seen.
No. No.
No.
Well, and even the suicide hotlines,
Mhm.
and their numbers increased.
Mhm.
And I'll even throw this out, and this is something that I have been aware of recently, but uh, sexual abuse to
Oh,
children,
yes. Yes.
your sex trafficking, your
Yes.
addiction to pornography,
Oh, yeah.
all of that stuff,
Mhm.
that is tripled. And nobody's talking about that either, you
Mhm.
know.
And the development of children. Think about this. We have children that were isolated and weren't around anybody but maybe their parents. Okay. They didn't see other kids. Okay. My granddaughter, she's 2.5 now. Okay. When she first was around other kids, like really around other kids, she was like, whoa. And
Like, what are these?
she petted them like a dog and hugged them like she would her dog. And it's funny and it's cute, but at the same time you're like, that's freaking sad.
Yeah, yeah,
And she is way more adjusted than a lot of kids.
yeah.
And think of the fear, the constant fear. There are more and more kids having to go into therapy, having mental issues, having breakdowns, having all of this. The mental and physical health of our society right now is pitiful. It was bad to begin with, but now
Right,
it's pitiful. And you wonder why we have the issues we have. Duh. I
right.
mean, we are not addressing the real issue. Nobody talks about it. Nobody wants to talk about it
No,
because it's not fun. It's not easy. And it doesn't, you know, put money in the pockets of
exactly.
certain people. So
Well,
there's no incentive to do it.
oh, of course, because if money's not involved, just like, even with this channel, the addiction and eating disorders are kind of, oh, well, that sort of thing. Or
Mhm.
when I mentioned the child pornography and the sex trafficking and all like that, that is not popular at all.
Oh, no.
And nobody wants to talk about it, but it's
Mm-mm.
reality. And the
It is.
reality is also our immune systems are being so compromised.
Yep.
If
That's
you
the issue. Yep.
exactly, if you get the you know what,
Hmm.
and you get over it fairly quickly and there's no issues, guess what?
No problem.
Your immune
No problem.
system uh did what it was supposed to do. That's what it's
Hmm.
designed for. But you have to take care of your immune system right off the bat. You can't just
Hmm.
say, oh, well, it's the luck of the draw. No, it is your immune system and it's your body and how they handle it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, and health is your responsibility, nobody else's. You
exactly.
have to step up and do what you need to do, take care of your own health, empower yourself, do what you
Right.
need to do. Nobody else's responsibility is to take care of you.
Exactly.
Sorry, it's not. You have to step up, be a big girl, be a big boy, and do what you need to do. And sometimes it's
Right.
not fun. No, okay, I understand it's not fun sometimes, but if you want a quality of life, if you don't want to have to live in fear, you got to take care of your health. Yeah, or what's the point? Do you want to just be surviving, or do you want to thrive? There's a big difference. Survive
Right.
or thrive. I choose to thrive.
Right. Me too. And it's taking responsibility for your stuff. Katie Kelly says that all the time. She doesn't say stuff, but I love her. But Jimmy Moore yesterday, he posed a question when he was doing his sabbatical and he's walking and everything. He says, what's holding you back from your goal? Well, I put, and here's my number one thing, and I'll be honest, fear. And he
Uh-huh.
says,
Sure.
what are you scared of? And I'm like, I really had to think about that because I've lived in fear for 49 years because of my childhood trauma, you know,
Mhm.
and I'm like, you're exactly right. He says, people will fail. They're going to fail. That's how you learn. And
That's
I said,
right.
well, I equated failing with punishment because that's
Uh-huh.
what happened to me when I was young.
Sure.
So that's what happened all through my life is, well, I've got to be perfect. I've got to do this right, And now I sit in fear and not do anything because I'm so scared of messing up.
Yeah.
And I think that that's with a lot of our viewers as well. You know, they're scared to take the first step. They're scared to say, okay, I need to be proactive.
Mhm.
And, you know, I know that you have dealt with clients like that. What do you tell them when they're sitting here frozen in fear?
Well, it's all about how you look at things and changing your mindset. First, you have to understand that that is what the issue is. If that's your underlying issue, fear, okay, now you know what you're dealing with. Now you can work on it. If you don't even know why you can't make these changes, how are you going to fix something you don't even know what it is? I mean, you're just going to change a tire when it's really your muffler. I mean, you don't know what to do. So once you can pinpoint what it is you actually need and feel, then you can start making your changes. And honestly, it's most of my clients, it's not really fear. It's just something that they haven't figured out yet, that they have not dealt with. They don't understand what need is not being met. That's the big thing. That's what's holding them back. And it very well could be fear. Fear is a huge thing for a lot of people, especially now. Fear is like, good gosh, it's like, almost a virtuous thing to be fearful.
Right.
And it's so, I don't understand it, but it's just so in our faces all the time. It's a sad thing, but yeah, you just have to focus on and figure out what it is. Why am I feeling the way I'm feeling? Why can I not stick with something? Why do I keep falling off the wagon? Why do I keep going back? What is going on? There is something that is not resolved, that has never been
Right.
dealt with. Sure,
Right.
you might be able to make some changes, but it's not going to be long term.
Right.
It
Right.
can't be until you deal with that
Right.
issue. I don't care what anybody says. Yeah, I've made a million changes. I've lost weight tons of times. Big deal. It meant nothing because it didn't stick. I
Right.
didn't learn what I needed to learn. I didn't fix what I needed to fix. And
Right.
until I dealt with that, and I still have work to do. I still do. I still have some trauma I need to deal with. I've come a long way. I don't binge, I don't purge, I don't do any of that. That's been many years, but there's still other things that need to be dealt with. And as you change and evolve, different things come up. So you got to figure out what it
Right.
is, because you can't
Right.
fix something you don't know.
Right. Right.
That's usually our
Absolutely.
first thing. We kind of have a discussion, like, okay, so what do you think? What's going on? Was there something that, you've pushed aside? Is there a need that maybe is not being met? How can you deal with that? It,
Right.
it's very rarely, honestly, just the food with my clients, because by the time they come to me, they already know all that. What they want to know is why did they do this and then fall off the wagon? Why
Right.
can't I stick with it? Why do I have no willpower?
Right.
Oh, wait.
Right.
Willpower, let's not even worry about willpower.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You got to have some motivation. You got to have a little bit to get started. Okay, sure. But that is
Right.
not what's going to take you to the end, because
Right.
willpower, poof, it goes away.
Right.
So you
Right.
can't rely on that. So, by figuring out what the root issue really is, that is the biggest thing out of everything.
Right.
And it definitely does help when you're on a nutrient dense diet, to where your mind, like we talked
Yes.
about before, is in a better place. So absolutely, but it doesn't cure
Right. Right.
the root issue, really. Even with food addiction, there's still something else. Yes, you can fix the actual physiological addiction, but why were you addicted? And usually one addiction, you've had other addictions. It's just,
Yes. Yes.
so generally speaking. So
That's what I have figured out in my life, going to therapy and really kind of digging and really kind of trying to get to the root of this. There's more than one addiction. And it a lot of times it morphs into some other areas and some other things. Control is one of my big issues, especially if you've grown up in a chaotic household. and you feel like you have no control, that's one thing that you can control is your body, you know.
Absolutely.
And so that's one of the things that I'm like, okay, well, I can't control what's going on around me, but I can control, you know, what I put into my body, how my body does, you know, and it that can be good to a certain extent. But then when you cross that line and it goes over into, you know, an area that, hey, this is not really serving you, this is not doing, you know, any good in your life, that's when you have the problem. And that's when, you know, you need to seek help. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I was just on a podcast and we were talking about this too, is there's nothing wrong with asking for help, because
right,
it doesn't mean you're weak or you're a failure, even though you've kind of been raised to, oh, just suck it up and deal with it.
right,
No, if you don't have the tools to be able to work through things, I mean, are you going to be able to build a shed if you don't have a hammer or nails or whatever?
right,
I mean, you need
right,
certain tools, and we aren't born with those tools, okay?
right,
Sometimes we need help, and that's okay. Whether it's from a therapist or you need to go see a health coach or whatever it
right,
is to
right,
help work it through, or people, you know, like us who have been through it, and
right,
we can empath be empathetic towards them, as
right,
well as kind of give them hope that, yeah, we were in a bad place too, but now look,
right,
and help guide them and work with
right.
them. And
Yeah,
it makes a huge difference. And support is so important, you know, and accountability too, you know,
yeah,
having somebody that's actually cares, you know,
right,
like, oh, okay, so what did you do this week? You know, like, okay, let's talk about, you know, what went on this week. Just having that is powerful. And
right,
it's okay to ask for help. It is. And we
right.
can't always find that within our family or friends, unfortunately. And
Yeah,
that's okay. That's okay. You can reach out beyond that. It's okay. And it doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you're broken. It's
right,
okay.
right. Well, speaking of that, I know that you have several links and you know you do coaching as well. If they want to reach out to you, how can they get in touch with you?
Well, easy. If you go to my Instagram, Lone Star Keto Girl, I do have links. I have a link tree that has a bunch of different links on it. And I also have a book link on my Instagram. So that's probably the easiest way to do it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Well, thank you, Amber, for
you're
talking with
welcome.
me. And guys, if you need any help whatsoever, reach out to her. If she can't help you, I know that she has got resources to absolutely send you or to, you know, get you in touch with somebody. I will talk to y'all later. Y'all have a great day.